While my wife was lying in a hospital bed fighting for her life, my daughter, my only child, was sipping cocktails on a beach in Hawaii. Yeah, you heard that right. While I was holding my wife's trembling hand and praying for one more sunrise with her, our daughter was posting selfies with captions like, "Living my best life." Tell me, what would you have done if you were me? Would you forgive your child for abandoning you both at the worst moment of your life? Or would you feel the same burning anger I did when she finally walked through our front door, tanned, smiling, and utterly oblivious to the pain she had caused? Because I'll be honest, when she came home, I didn't recognize her anymore. Not as my daughter. Not as the girl I raised with love and sacrifice. And what happened next, it broke whatever was left of my heart. I guess to really understand the storm that tore through my life, I need to start from the beginning. My wife, Laura, and I were high school sweethearts. She was the kind of woman whose ladder could light up an entire room. We got married young, built a life together from almost nothing, and after years of trying, we had our daughter, Megan. She was our miracle baby, our pride, our joy, our reason for everything. I worked 2 jobs to make sure she'd never go without anything. Laura stayed home when Megan was little, and she poured her entire soul into motherhood. But as Megan grew older, things began to change. She became distant, entitled even. Maybe we spoiled her too much. Maybe we made life too easy for her. She started seeing the world as something that owed her happiness. Still, I kept telling myself she was just young. She'd grow out of it. When Laura was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, it felt like the universe had punched a hole straight through my chest. Everything stopped. The doctors told us there wasn't much time, maybe months, maybe weeks. I remember sitting in the car after that appointment, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white and just screaming into the empty air. I didn't know how to tell Megan. She was 26 at the time, living in the city, working at some marketing firm, always busy, always, or the go. When I finally called her, she was quiet for a few seconds and then said, "That's really sad, Dad, but I can't come home right now. We're in the middle of a big campaign." That sentence cut deeper than any knife could. Laura tried to protect me from the pain of it. She'd smile, say, "She'll come around." But deep down, I knew she was hurting too. The chemo sessions were brutal. She lost her hair, her strength, but never her grace. She still smiled for me. Every day I sat beside her bed, reading her favorite books, holding her hand when she drifted in and out of sleep. Every time she winced in pain, it killed a piece of me inside. And through all that, I kept hoping Megan would show up just once to see what real love and courage looked like. Months passed. The treatments weren't working. One evening, while I was adjusting her blanket, Laura whispered, "Promise me something." Her voice was so weak I had leaned close to hear her. "Promise me you'll keep living after I'm gone. Don't let grief take you." I promised, even though I didn't believe I could keep it. When I called Megan again to tell her that her mother didn't have long, she finally said she'd come. I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe she'd changed. Maybe she'd finally realized what mattered. But when she arrived, it wasn't the homecoming I had imagined. She walked into the hospital room wearing expensive sunglasses, scrolling through her phone, and the first words out of her mouth were, "This room smells awful." My dying wife smiled at her anyway. She reached out, tried to hold her hand, and Megan barely touched it before pulling away. She stayed for maybe 10 minutes, then said she had to meet some friends. I didn't stop her. I couldn't. I just stared at the door after she left, feeling like someone had carved out my heart and left me hollow. A few days later, Laura slipped into a coma. I didn't leave her side for a second. I watched the monitors beep slower and slower, praying for a miracle that never came. And then one night she was gone. Just like that, the world went silent. I kissed her forehead, whispered that I loved her, and for the first time in 40 years, I was alone. Megan didn't even pick up when I called to tell her. She texted me an hour later, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll come by next week. I had a flight booked for Hawaii months ago. I can't cancel now. It's non-refundable." I thought it was some kind of sick joke. But she went. She actually went. While I was arranging her mother's funeral, she was uploading photos from the beach, smiling, drinking from a coconut, hashtags like Pay Paradise vibes and Fey No Worries. I wanted to throw my phone through a wall every time I saw one. When I stood over Laura's grave that cold morning, it was just me, the pastor, and a handful of close friends. Our daughter, the one Laura had loved more than her own life, was nowhere to be seen. After the burial, I went home, sat in the living room, surrounded by her pictures, and I broke down. I hadn't cried like that since I was a child. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I wanted to scream, to rage, to ask the universe how love could turn into something so hollow. A week later, Megan finally came home. She looked radiant, tan, glowing, full of energy. She stepped through the door and said, "Hey, Dad! How are you holding up?" as if she was greeting me after a normal day. I stared at her, speechless. Then she handed me a souvenir mug that said, "Aloha from Hawaii," and smiled. Something inside me snapped. I asked her, "Do you even understand what you did? Your mother died, Megan. She begged to see you and you were lying on a beach." She rolled her eyes and said, "Dad, Mom wouldn't have wanted me to be miserable. Life goes on. Life goes on." That phrase still echoes in my head like a curse. I told her to get out of my house. She laughed at first, thinking I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I told her she had to leave and not come back, not until she learned what it meant to love someone more than herself. She stormed out, slamming the door, shouting that I was being dramatic. So that's the situation I was in, a widowed man, heartbroken, angry, and betrayed by the only family I had left. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have forgiven her? Or would you have done exactly what I did next? Before I tell you what happened, I want you to think about that and tell me in the comments what you'd have done if your child turned their back on you and their dying mother for a vacation. After that confrontation, Megan didn't call. Weeks went by. Then one day she showed up at my door again. This time she wasn't smiling. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red. She told me she'd lost her job. Apparently, her boss had seen the Hawaii pictures she'd posted right after her mother's death and didn't take kindly to it, especially since she had taken emergency leave for family matters. She'd been fired for dishonesty and insensitivity. Karma, I guess, has a strange way of finding people. She asked if she could move back in just until she got back on her feet. I wanted to say no. Every part of me screamed to shut the door, but Laura's voice echoed in my head. Promise me you'll keep living? Maybe living meant forgiving even when it hurt. So I let her in. But things weren't the same. The house was full of ghosts, Laura's ladder, her music, her scent. Megan barely spoke to me. We lived like strangers under one roof. I'd catch her sometimes sitting in her mother's old chair, staring at the photo on the mantel. I could see guilt in her eyes, but she never said it. One evening, she finally broke. She came into the living room trembling and said, "Dad, I messed up. I thought I was coping in my own way. I didn't want to face it, so I ran. I'm so sorry." Hearing those words was like reopening a wound and then finally letting it heal. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, this broken version of the girl I once knew, and I saw my wife's reflection in her eyes. I told her, "You can't run from pain, Megan. It follows you until you face it." We cried that night, both of us, for Laura, for the lost time, for the mistakes we'd made. After that, things slowly began to change. Megan started volunteering at a hospice center, helping patients who were going through what her mother did. She said she wanted to make amends, to give back in some way, and I think that's when I finally saw a glimpse of the woman Laura always believed our daughter could become. Months later, on the anniversary of Laura's passing, we went together to her grave. Megan brought flowers, sunflowers, her mother's favorite, and knelt beside the headstone. She whispered something I couldn't hear, and when she stood up, she looked lighter, freer. On the drive home, she said, "You were right, Dad. Life goes on, but not without love." I smiled for the first time in a long time. The pain never fully goes away, but it changes shape. It becomes a reminder of what you lost and what you still have. Laura may be gone, but her love, our love, lives in the lessons we learned the hard way. And maybe forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. Maybe it's about setting yourself free from the bitterness that chains you. So that's my story. I lost my wife, almost lost my daughter, and somehow found a way to keep going. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven her like I did? Or would you have shut her out forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe family is worth fighting for even after heartbreak, then please like this video. Subscribe for more real stories like this. And don't forget to share it with someone who needs a reminder that love, no matter how broken, can still heal. I'll see you all in the next story.